Hey guys, welcome back. Subscribe if you're new. I got very exciting news today, you guys. It's the official graduation day for my nutrition school. That means I'm officially a certified holistic health coach. I'm a health coach now. Yay!
I pick through my pockets for gifts of the heart, velour and dimes for the world.
So today we're gonna talk about the low-FODMAP diet and how it works. If you haven't watched the first video, I'm gonna put a link up there. Please go watch that video before you watch this one. It's important that you know the common gut issues and what I'm focusing on, which is IBS. I explained what FODMAPs are and why they cause problems. It's really important to understand these things before you jump into the diet. I know people tend to jump right into the solution before they even understand the problem, so watch the part 1. Also, I talked about it multiple times in my previous video. Do not self-diagnose when it comes to gut problems. You may think you have IBS, but it can be other more serious medical conditions that needs more than just dietary changes. Go see a doctor if you have specific concerns. And with that being said, let's get into the video. Just a little quick recap. The low-FODMAP diet was created 10 to 15 years ago by a group of researchers in Monash University. The low-FODMAP diet is backed by solid scientific research. Everything I said used in this video will be linked down below. This article about the efficacy of the low-FODMAP diet for IBS, 86% of patients say that their symptoms improve with the low-FODMAP diet. In my opinion, maybe it's just because I don't like the word diet. It sounds like a short-term restrictive thing, which to some extent is true, but I see the low-FODMAP diet more of a self-experiment, like a nutrition experiment with yourself. You'll see why I call it an experiment after I explain to you how the diet works. So the first thing you need to know about the diet is that it has 3 phases. This is very important because some people stay in the first phase forever, which is very bad for you. So you need to understand there are 3 phases of this diet: elimination phase, reintroduction phase, and the integration phase. And I'll talk about each one of these phases. So let's start with elimination phase, which is a very important start to the diet. The elimination phase usually lasts from 2 to 6 weeks. Personally, for me, it lasted about a month, so 4 weeks. It varies from person to person. It really depends on how severe your symptoms are and also how quickly you react to the diet. It's kind of like a reset where you eliminate all the high FODMAP food. This doesn't mean that it's no FODMAP. You're just reducing the amount of FODMAPs in your diet substantially. And a lot of people say that their symptoms improve significantly even after like a week or something. For this phase, there's a lot of prepping work and planning to do. I've summarized a couple things that tend to throw people off track during the elimination phase, like the hard part of this phase, so that you can understand it and prevent it. The first thing is when you buy packaged foods, processed foods, store-bought, prepared foods. It's really easy for high FODMAP ingredients to sneak in and to be hidden in these packaged foods. For example, onions and garlic is pretty much in every single pasta sauce or a lot of dressings and barbecue sauce. Onions and garlic are high FODMAP foods that you need to avoid during this phase. That's the first thing you need to be careful with. Second one, it's about portion size. What that means is even with low FODMAP foods, if you consume over a certain amount, it can become high FODMAP. To check all the portion sizes for the elimination phase, you need to use the Monash University app. I'm gonna give you an example. Eggplants. 1 cup of eggplants per meal is considered low FODMAP and is okay for the elimination phase. But if you eat over 3 cups of eggplants per meal, that is high FODMAP. They call it the traffic light system. So with the red and yellow and green, green means it's okay, red is high FODMAP, yellow is moderate FODMAP. In the elimination phase, you want to stick to food with green light only. This app is the ultimate resource and is developed by the Monash University. If you are gonna go on this diet, this is definitely something you're gonna need. Another thing about portion size is overeating. When you're on this diet, try not to skip meals and be like overly hungry before a meal. Everybody gets a little bit bloated and has some kind of digestive problem when they eat a big meal. But when it comes to people with IBS and a sensitive gut, it can actually trigger a lot of unpleasant symptoms. Another unique thing about the FODMAPs is that, let's say vegetables, different parts of the vegetable can have different levels of FODMAPs. A very common example is green onions or scallions. So the green part of the stalk is considered low FODMAP, but the white part at the bottom is high FODMAP. Things like this you have to be careful with, and how do you learn about these things is through reading books, doing your research online, or seeing a registered dietitian, because doctors do not tell you this. All of this knowledge you need to self-acquire. It sounds a little crazy that you have to learn all this by yourself when you're already suffering from your symptoms, but that is unfortunately where we're at when it comes to IBS. That's why I linked all the resources and all the things that I used when I started the diet to learn about the diet and how to do it properly. If you're someone that's serious about going on the low FODMAP diet, don't just listen to these videos. Go read the book, the low FODMAP step-by-step recipe book. It also explained a lot about the diet itself in the first couple chapters. In this book, all the recipes are compliant with the elimination phase. Go read the Monash University Low FODMAP guide. I'm not able to tell you everything in these videos. It's very hard to explain everything in detail. So if you're serious about going on the diet, go learn about it. Alright, let's move on to the next phase, which is reintroduction. Or some people call it the challenge phase. When you feel like the reset has been done, your symptoms are under control, you can move on to the reintroduction phase, which is to identify what exactly are the cause of your problems. It's very likely that not all high FODMAP foods are causing you problems, and this phase is for you to experiment and challenge and test out what is the cause of your problem, and also, you know, rule out things that are not causing you problems. This reintroduction phase is not hard, but it definitely requires you to pay very close attention to what you eat and how your body reacts to the type of food that you eat. Any way that you can document the food that you tested for yourself and the symptoms that you experienced, try to document it and try to have a food journal. It's gonna help you, you know, organize and summarize at the end of this phase, you know, what's causing you a problem and what's not. The result of this phase is very different from person to person, and in general, this reintroduction phase takes about 6 to 8 weeks. It definitely takes a good amount of time to reintroduce and test out foods. I'll just walk you through a very simple example of a week in this reintroduction phase. Every single week, you're gonna test one group of food. Let's say this week, I've decided to test fructose and to see if I have a problem with fructose. Fructose is under the letter M in FODMAP, monosaccharides. Honey is really high in fructose. We want to see if honey will cause me a problem. How it works is that you're gonna pick 3 days during the week. Let's say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are gonna be my test days. You only pick one meal of that day to include a certain amount of honey and see how you feel. So for example, Monday dinner, I'm gonna eat 2 teaspoons of honey. And then afterwards, maybe the second day, I'm gonna see how my body feels and if I have any symptoms. If you have symptoms at this point, stop this experiment because you have a problem with fructose and it's probably something you should be careful about in the future. But if you don't have IBS symptoms, you can move on. Let's say Wednesday dinner, incorporate 1 tablespoon of honey. So you see the portion is increasing. This is why we call it a challenge phase. You want to challenge your body and see how much of a certain type of food you are able to tolerate, or maybe you're just not able to tolerate any amount of honey at all. So this process is definitely a very intricate, detailed process. The book that I mentioned before, I have to mention it again because it really helped me a lot during my FODMAP journey. I'm not sponsored, it's just a book that I've been using myself. We're finally at the last phase of this diet, which is the integration phase. By by this point, usually you already know what types of foods tend to give you problems. My symptoms got a lot better during the 2 phases. So it's kind of scary to enter this integration phase, to blend everything into your diet and eat like a normal person again. But don't be afraid, because I spoke with a couple of registered dietitians across Canada, and a lot of them told me that people tend to stay in the elimination phase because they're scared to try new things and they're gonna have symptom flare-ups. But staying in the elimination phase, it's not good for your overall health. Nutrition wise, the diversity of food that you're able to eat is really narrow. You don't want to stay like that forever. It's not good for you. At one point, you're gonna have to move on and get into the integration phase. But honestly, the integration phase is not a phase. It's more of a lifetime practice, in my opinion. So what integration means in this context is that you use whatever you discovered, whatever you learned during the first 2 phases about your own gut, about how your gut works, and using that in like a normal daily context. You know, you don't want to stay in the low FODMAP phase forever. The whole point of this diet and even integrating it to your daily life is for you to understand, okay, these are the foods that I tend to have problem with and tend to give me symptoms. So I will try to avoid these in my daily diet as much as possible. You won't drive yourself crazy anymore not knowing what's happening and what's causing you the problem. So I'm very thankful for the researchers, whoever that created this low FODMAP diet at Monash University. Honestly, this is it's revolutionary, because there's no other proven treatment when it comes to IBS, and this is by far the most effective way. And if you have a couple days where you experience really bad IBS symptoms, you can always go back to the elimination phase for a couple days. Limit the amount of FODMAP in your diet, can kind of bring you back on track. The elimination phase can definitely be used as a short-term reset. So the integration phase is definitely where I'm at right now. My problem is definitely with the fructans, including onions and garlic, which is really tragic because I love onions and garlic, but they definitely tend to give me gastro problems. So I try to avoid it as much as I can. Find alternative spices. There are other options. Sometimes I can avoid it if I'm eating out or with friends and family. You don't need to be perfect all the time. Don't overstress yourself. Try to find a balance of still enjoying food and enjoying life without being too restrictive and too obsessed. That can actually trigger people to get into an eating disorder or orthorexia. Just be cautious, don't go crazy, and if you find yourself being overly obsessive and restrictive when it comes to food while you're on the diet, definitely go seek help and go see a registered dietitian. The FODMAP diet is a work in progress too. The researchers at Monash University are constantly doing more research and testing new food. There's still a lot to be researched and to be done. So just be patient with the science, be patient with yourself. You know, speaking about that, I am currently working on a startup focusing on the low FODMAP diet. Definitely talk more about it in the future and tell you guys what I'm working on, but I just feel like there can be a lot more tangible support when it comes to the low FODMAP diet and for people with IBS, because if you have IBS, you know how much it affects your life. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something new today. Just one more time, do not self-diagnose, okay? I do not want these videos to mislead you into jumping into the diet without even knowing what you have. All right, I'll see you guys next week.